If you walked into a rock concert in the 1970s, you'd see a man on stage, silk scarves, leather pants, gripping the microphone like a weapon. He'd scream, shout, leap and bounce. His name was Steven Tyler, and he wasn't just singing, he was surviving. This is Steven's journey from New York's classical music-filled homes to Boston's dark clubs, from there to the peak, the fall, and the rebirth. This is a story written not with his voice, but with his endurance. And perhaps for the first time, you'll hear the silence behind that loud voice. March 26, 1948, in New York's Bronx neighborhood, Stephen Victor Tallarico was born. His father, Victor, was a classical music teacher. His mother, Susan, a secretary. The house was always filled with piano sounds. Beethoven, Mozart, Bach. Stephen grew up hearing these sounds. Disciplined, orderly, controlled sounds. But inside him, there was another sound. Wilder, freer, more dangerous. When little Stephen was 3 years old, he approached his father's piano. He touched the keys. Notes came out, but he didn't want to read music. He wanted to feel. He'd press keys randomly, create chaos. His father would say, "No, Stephen, not like that. You must play by the rules." But Stephen didn't like rules. He liked freedom. Stephen's mother was of Italian descent, his father Polish-German. There were two different worlds at home. From the Italian side, passion, enthusiasm, loud voices. From the German side, discipline, composure, control. Stephen grew up between these two worlds, and he absorbed both. This mixture made him controlled chaos, disciplined madness. At 10, he heard a sound on the radio. Elvis Presley's Hound Dog, Little Richard's screams, Chuck Berry's guitar riffs, rock and roll. It was forbidden at home. "This isn't music," his father would say. "This is noise." But for Stephen, this was freedom. He'd listen secretly. At night, he'd turn on the radio, keep the volume low. And something awakened inside him. A rebellion. A passion. At 14, he started playing drums. When he first hit the drum kit, he felt something. Power, control, anger. "This is my language," he said, and he would speak that language for life. Drums taught him to use his body. Rhythm, pulse, energy. Each hit was a confession. In high school, he formed bands. The Strangers, Chain Reaction. They played in small clubs, local bars, school dances. No one listened. But Stephen didn't stop, because music was the only thing he knew. The only language he understood. His father would say, "You should go to university." Stephen would say, "No, I'm going to be a musician." His father would shake his head, with disappointment. But Stephen didn't care. He'd already made his decision. In 1970, he moved from New York to Boston. New city, new opportunities. While swimming in Lake Sunapee, he met Joe Perry and Tom Hamilton. The three talked. Music, dreams, passion. "Let's form a band," they said. And they did. They named it Aerosmith. Steven Tyler, no longer Tallarico, now Tyler. Joe Perry, Tom Hamilton, Joey Kramer, Ray Tabano. Later Brad Whitford. 5 men, 1 dream. They started playing in Boston's dark clubs. The first concerts were empty. Maybe 10 people, maybe less. But Stephen would transform on stage. He was no longer Stephen. He was a creature. He'd scream, spin, jump, throw the microphone. He'd wear scarves, purse his lips, twist his body. "Is he crazy?" they'd ask. "No," Joe would say. "He's just Stephen." In 1973, their first album came out. Aerosmith. Inside was a song, "Dream On." It had been written years ago on Stephen's father's piano. Classical music meeting rock. It gradually played on radios. People heard it, and Aerosmith became known. In 1975 and 1976, 2 more albums came out. Toys in the Attic and Rocks, hits, Sweet Emotion, Walk This Way, Back in the Saddle. Aerosmith was now on big stages, stadiums, thousands of people. Stephen was king of the stage. He'd scream and the crowd would scream back. He was no longer just a singer. He was a performance. Scarves, colorful clothes, that walk. Every concert was a ritual. "The stage is my home," he'd say. "There, I'm free. But with fame came other things: drugs, alcohol, heroin, cocaine. Stephen tried them and fell. Just fun, he said at first, but fun turned to addiction, quickly, uncontrollably. Stephen and Joe Perry were called the Toxic Twins, because both were addicted, both losing control. On stage they were perfect, their chemistry was magic, but backstage there was chaos, fights, arguments, hate, damage. Band members were worried. "You're both going to die," they said. Stephen and Joe smiled, because death seemed distant then. In 1979, Joe Perry left the band. "I can't take it anymore," he said. He couldn't work with Stephen anymore. Stephen was devastated. Aerosmith lost its best friend, its most important creative partner. But Stephen tried to continue, because he didn't know what else to do. Music was the only thing he knew. And without music, who was he? The early 1980s were dark times for Aerosmith. Albums were bad. At concerts, Stephen would sometimes forget lyrics. The stage was now hell. His voice started getting damaged. Screams didn't come out as high anymore. The body was tired. The soul was broken. In 1983, Stephen was hospitalized. Overdose. He almost died. In the hospital bed, he stared at the ceiling. "Is this life?" he asked. There was no answer, only silence. And that silence was terrifying, because Stephen couldn't deal with silence. He needed noise, but now there was no noise, just white ceiling, white walls, and his own thoughts. In 1986, his family and band members intervened. Official intervention. "You need to go to treatment," they said. Stephen resisted. "I'm fine." "No," they said, "you're dying, and we love you." Those words touched him. Loved, maybe for the first time in a long while, he felt something. And finally Stephen accepted, because he was tired of fighting, of running, of dying. He went to rehab. For the first time in years, he was clean. No drugs, no alcohol, just Stephen. And that Stephen was scared. "Who am I?" he asked the therapist. "Without drugs, without alcohol, without the stage, who am I?" The therapist didn't answer, because this was an answer Stephen had to find. Joe Perry had returned to the band in 1984, but there was coldness between him and Stephen. They'd fought for years, hurt each other. After rehab, the two talked, really talked. Maybe for the first time. "We're brothers," Stephen said, "and brothers fight, but they don't separate." Joe nodded. "Let's try again." In 1986, a miracle happened. Run DMC remade Walk This Way. Hip-hop meets rock fusion. Stephen and Joe appeared in the video. Breaking through the wall, it was symbolic. Because they were really breaking down walls. It exploded on MTV. A new generation discovered Aerosmith, and Aerosmith was reborn. They returned from death. In 1987, the Permanent Vacation album came out. Dude, Looks Like a Lady, Angel, hits. Aerosmith was back. And this time, they were stronger. Because they'd now learned to survive, to fall, to stay down, to get back up. In 1989, the Pump album came. Love in an Elevator, Janie's Got a Gun. The second carried a social message: child abuse. Stephen wasn't just singing rock and roll anymore, he was telling stories. Pains, truths. In 1993, Get a Grip came out. Crying, crazy, amazing. 3 ballads, 3 videos. Videos starring Alicia Silverstone. Aerosmith was MTV's favorite, but they were aging now, 40s, 50s. And young bands were coming, grunge, alternative rock. Aerosmith started looking like yesterday's band. In 1998, they wrote a ballad for the Armageddon film. Diane Warren composed it. I Don't Want to Miss a Thing. Aerosmith's first #1 on Billboard, but some criticized, "This isn't Aerosmith, this is too soft, this is too pop." Stephen didn't care. "We've evolved," he said, "and evolving is surviving." In the 2000s, Stephen's voice started changing. It was aging. Those high notes were getting harder. Screams didn't come out like before. "I'm losing my voice," he told a doctor. The doctor answered, "No, it's just changing. Everyone ages." voices too, and you have to learn to live with it. In 2009, at a concert, Stephen fell off the stage. A bad fall, fractures, injuries. The tour was cancelled. Fans were worried. "Is this the end?" people asked. Stephen answered, "No, never." But his body wasn't young anymore. He was in his 60s. And rock and roll was a young game. New tensions emerged between Stephen and band members. Stephen wanted to do solo work, made a country album. The band objected. "You're Aerosmith," they said. Stephen was conflicted. Who am I, a solo artist or part of the band? The answer was both, but living both at once was hard. In 2011 and 2012, Stephen was a judge on American Idol. He entered pop culture, evaluated young talents. Some said, "Sellout, rock icon now on a pop show." Stephen said, "No, I'm just living, in different ways." And music is music, pop or rock. By the late 2010s, Stephen was in his 70s, still touring. But tired now, on stage he didn't jump as much as before. There were cracks in his voice. The crowd still applauded. But Stephen knew that the time had come. He had vocal cord surgery. Doctors said, "You have to be careful now, don't strain the voice, or there'll be permanent damage." Stephen nodded, but kept going on stage, because the stage was life. Stephen without a stage, who was he? In 2020, the pandemic came, concerts were cancelled, Stephen stayed home. For the first time in years, there was silence, real silence. No crowd, no stage, no screaming. "How does this feel?" someone asked. Stephen said, "Strange, but maybe I needed this, maybe I needed to stop." In 2023, Aerosmith announced their final tour. Peace Out, the farewell tour. Stephen knew this would be his last time on stage. Every concert was a farewell. Every song was a memory. Singing Dream On, his eyes would well up, remembering the old days. Those small clubs in Boston. Days when no one listened to them. Now, stadiums were full, and everyone came for them. During the tour, serious problems emerged with Stephen's voice. Doctors said, "You need to rest. There's serious damage. If you continue, you might lose your voice completely." Concerts were cancelled. Fans were sad. Stephen collapsed. "I can still do it," he said. But his body said, "No." And this time, he had to listen. In August 2024, Aerosmith announced their retirement. Official statement came. Steven Tyler's voice was no longer suitable for touring. Permanent damage. "Our hearts are broken," the band's statement said. But Steven's health is the most important thing. Stephen quietly accepted. Because he no longer had the strength to fight. He'd fought for years, with addiction, with age, with the limits of his voice. And now it was over. The final battle was lost. But Stephen was still alive. And that was a victory. Today, Steven Tyler is 76, no longer on stage, but his voice still echoes. On radios, in playlists, in memories. When Dream On plays, people remember that young man screaming on stage, waving scarves, holding on to life. But now they know that scream wasn't just a song, it was survival. Steven Tyler went down in rock history. But how? With the beauty of his voice? No, with his endurance. He fell, got up, fought addiction, won, lost, won again. His voice broke, but he continued. "My screams," he once said, "were actually my attempt to hold on to life." An empty concert hall, dark. On the floor, an abandoned microphone. Lights off. Seats empty. But if you listen carefully, you can still hear it. That scream. That voice. Steven Tyler's voice. The voice of survival. And you understand, sometimes the loudest sounds come from the deepest silences. And sometimes the most powerful songs are the ones left unsung. So how do you remember Steven Tyler? As those screams, or as the survival struggle behind the screams? Share with us in the comments. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss another journey through music history's most resilient voices.